Hey friends, welcome back to the show up season of the Mary Marantz Show, a season where we are just going to keep on reminding you all season long, over and over, as many times as it takes, that we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up so that you can let this be the year when you finally show up and get moving on all those things you can't go a day without thinking about. We are so excited that this episode is being brought to you ad-free by the Writing Prompts, my brand new guide that just went live yesterday. It is 50 plus prompts in a guide that is 120 plus pages long. No fluff, all meat, where I not only tell you what to write about each day, I also use each prompt to teach you a different writing technique. Each one is sort of a different side of the prism, 50 angles of the prism of writing techniques in total that every writer should have in their tool belt so that you can get better in the craft of writing and visual storytelling every single day that you show up. And it also comes with 4 group coaching calls all throughout the month of February. Like I've been saying, give me a month and I'll make you a better writer. We've dropped the link in the show notes on both all the podcast platforms and on YouTube, so make sure you go check that out. Now on with the show. I wrote a post recently on Instagram that really resonated with a lot of people, and I wanted to start this solo episode here by sharing it now. I said, given the choice between excellence alone and consistency alone, consistency wins every time. This has infuriated me for years. Let me explain. I'll be honest, I have spent most of it, frustrated by the fact that excellence doesn't always win, air quotes around win, whatever that means, the way that I think it should. Depth is not rewarded. We have no time for that. Humility doesn't get you nearly the same number of clicks that hot takes do. Originality went out the window the second we realized it could be outsourced. In fact, in this upside down world, it often seems to me that there's actually an inverse relationship between the level of excellence that someone shows up with and how much their work is seen. Fluffy wins. Watered down wins. Surface level wins. Or as the poet laureate Niles Crane from Frasier once put it, mediocrity is the hallmark of popularity. Excellence doesn't always win the way I think it should. In fact, it often loses to people with far less talent, far less integrity, far less depth, far less substance, who offer far less value simply because they weren't afraid to show up. That infuriates me. Because what it means is that the kind ones, the quiet ones, the ones so often overlooked who might actually have some real talent to share with the world, year after year, we go on playing small and hiding in plain sight, afraid of being seen. And the world is worse for our absence. Continue to be consistent in your excellence, I said in the post. The world needs it now more than ever. And this whole post and why it resonated with so many people, I think a lot of it comes down to this idea of what is called the law of the harvest. I think I have also spent most of my life wishing that the law of the harvest wasn't true, being infuriated by the law of the harvest. At its most basic, the law of the harvest tells us that we reap what we sow. The inverse, of course, is also true. We do not reap what we did not sow. Or, as Zig Ziglar once put it, don't be upset by the results you didn't get with the work you didn't do. Ouch, right? That one hurts. That one hurts just a little bit. Do not be upset by the results you didn't get with the work you didn't do. But it also makes a lot of sense with what we're talking about here with consistency and excellence, because let's be real, a huge reason why so many of those people with far less talent, far less integrity, far less depth, far less substance, who offer far less value win is because they waste no time on little things like actually creating with excellence. So they have all the time and energy in the world to then go market themselves. And I find in myself that the inverse is also true, that I spend so much energy, so much time, so much thought, innovating, effort, originality on creating something that might actually help people, that when it comes time to consistently show up and talk about it, I feel like I have nothing left to give. So I'll spend months or years of my life writing something truly excellent, like a book or something like the writing prompts we spent months putting together, and then just expect that excellence alone should be enough, that just putting it out into the world should be enough. And I end up skipping over the part where I remember that I have to consistently remind people that I have created something of excellence. And then I'm upset with the results I didn't get for the work I didn't do. Not the work in creating it, I did plenty of that, but the work of actually showing up and sharing about what you've created, which it turns out is also part of the work we were put here to do. The law of the harvest tells us that we reap what we sow. The inverse, of course, is also true. We do not reap what we did not sow. But second, the law of the harvest will also tell us that we will reap in a different season than we sow. So we must learn to be patient. Patience. Another principle I am just not a huge fan of, if I'm being honest with you. I tend to be a little more Veruca Salt about the situation. I want the goose that laid the golden egg, Daddy, and I want it now. But number three, the law of the harvest tells us that if we are willing to plant faithfully and patiently, adding in the variable of time, if we are willing to see it through over the long haul, we will also reap far more than we sow. A single planted acorn, for example, can grow into a mighty oak tree, and that single oak tree can then turn into 10,000 more acorns, give or take. Turn right around and plant all of those acorns, and the numbers, of course, go up exponentially from there. Virtuous cycle, baby. Wins beget more wins. Momentum begets more momentum. Consistency compounds over time, and the ones who are willing to show up win. Given the choice between consistency alone and excellence alone, consistency wins every time. But here's why I think we quit. Those of us with excellence, here's why I think we quit. I said in my very first solo episode this season that for most of us, impatience kicks in long before consistency has a chance to. But I think there's something a layer deeper than that, the thing behind the thing. And that thing for us is shame. Some of us don't celebrate just showing up and planting the seeds long before we can ever point to something and say, hey, look, it's growing. Because we think just the act of showing up isn't big enough compared to what someone else has already done. We don't think the world will see it as worthy, these early beginnings. Do not despise the days of these early beginnings. And some of us don't celebrate because it will only point out how far behind we really are, how far we still have to go. We feel silly celebrating something, knowing that someone else could point to it and think we should have already achieved that by now. So we think it's not really worthy of pointing out. It's not worth being proud of. And in either case, we stop planting long before we should because we feel shame around how slow we are growing. We look around and we tell ourselves this lie, until I'm where they are, I can't celebrate any of these wins. Except that one-liner rule becomes a lifelong sentence. We spend our days never really satisfied with where we are, never really present and accounted for in our own lives, never getting around to celebrating these wins along the way because we are always focused on someone else's growth. So we stop planting long before we should. We have lost the art of letting life happen and unfold exactly how it was meant for us. We have lost the art of letting life surprise us. We walk into all of our moments with a white knuckle grip on how we think they should go, how fast we think it should grow. And in the process, we have forgotten what it looks like to live life with an open hand, which is, of course, the only way you can ever actually get around to planting something, by being willing to first let go of it. The other day, I was talking to Justin about all these dreams we hold in our hands that we try to hold on to tightly. And I told him through salty, hopeful tears, we can plant the seeds in the ground, but we can't go in and rip them open in the hopes of speeding up the process. If you really pause to think about it, there is magic there. Miracle. You can be the best gardener in the world. All the conditions to plant can be right. You can have the best tools, all the know-how, a fertile ground to start from. But no matter what you do, you cannot force a thing to grow. Somewhere between the planting and the harvest, we have to leave room for the miracle to happen. This magic that occurs in darkness, away from the watchful eyes of a waiting world. Those moments when you think you are buried, but that's really when the most important work is being done. That's when you realize it was never up to you to make it happen. And there's freedom there, true rest. So as January comes to a close here and we look forward to the rest of this year stretching out in front of us, I want you to walk into your days showing up and planting the seeds, even when, especially when you can't see anything growing yet. And remind yourself often of these 4 rules from the law of the harvest. Number 1, the law of the harvest tells us that we reap what we sow. the inverse is, of course, also true. We do not reap what we did not sow. So you have to do the work, and that includes the work of consistently showing up. Second, the law of the harvest tells us that we will reap in a different season than we sow. So we must learn to be patient. We have to get good and comfortable adding in that variable of time. And that means we have to find ways to celebrate long before we ever see the growth. Otherwise, our impatience will kick in long before our consistency has a chance to. Number 3, the law of the harvest tells us that we will reap far more than we sow. One acorn turns into a tree, which turns into 10,000 acorns, and it goes up exponentially each time we double down on what we are planting. But number 4, and maybe this one is the most important of all, like I talked about this week with Cynthia Yanoff on our guest episode, it is actually building the kind of structural integrity, a foundation of an intricate root system that can actually bear the weight of this kind of surface level success we are wishing so hard for right now. This is why there is a gap between the time of the planting and the time of the harvest. If we got it right away, it would feel more like a burden that would break us than a blessing. It reminds me of the song lyrics, I want to say from Stereophonics, don't quote me on that, but they go, it only takes one tree to make 1,000 matches. It only takes one match to burn 1,000 trees. Meaning the law of the harvest can pay off big if we continue planting. But who we are in the waiting is far more important than who we are when we win. So show up and keep planting. And until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your Show Up season. P.S. If you want to make this the year when you show up and put in your reps and keep planting those good seeds when it comes to your writing, then I would love for you to join me in this first ever round of the writing prompts. That's 50 prompts, 120-page guide, and it also gets you the entire month of February with me for group coaching calls where we're going to dig into becoming better writers. Like I always say, give me a month and I will make you a better writer. We've linked it all up in the show notes. Go grab your spot now, and I will see you next time.